The night the ocean turned glassy and the city dimmed to a single, pulsing horizon, Alexander Vale, 39, self-made billionaire, CEO of Horizon Synthesis, stepped out onto his penthouse terrace and found a white envelope taped to the railing. No branding, no return address, just his name, handwritten in a familiar slant that made memory tighten in his chest. He slid it open with his thumb. Inside, a USB key and a single line typed on paper that smelled like printer heat. "You don't own what you built. You stole it." He laughed once, the short, brittle kind of laugh that happens when gravity shifts mid-step. He had built Horizon out of borrowed space and empty pizza boxes, coded nights, bloodshot mornings, the garage's bowing ceiling, Mara's patience in a mug of cold coffee. "I didn't steal anything," he whispered, as if the city might answer back. But the handwriting, it was Mara's. His ex-wife. The one who had walked away 5 years ago with silence like a blade. In the kitchen's sterile glow, he plugged the USB into a laptop he kept for nothing but music. Folders bloomed. Draft patents. Early repo commits from a decade ago. Email threads with timestamps that cut through the years like piano wire. And then the thing that hooked behind his ribs, a signed assignment agreement naming a different originator. Noah Pierce, his college friend, the kid who had believed but never finished, the one who overdosed in a motel 2 months before Horizon's pivot and the first round of press that called Alex a visionary. The agreement, dated, witnessed, notarized, claimed Noah had sold the core algorithm months before launch to a shell company tied to Alex's first angel. "No," Alex said, standing too fast, the counter biting his palm. "No," Noah gave up. He quit. On the paper, ink didn't argue. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Turn on channel 8. He did, hands shaking. The anchor's hair didn't move when she said Horizon Synthesis was under federal inquiry for antitrust behavior and algorithmic fraud. A graphic slid on screen, his face beside a line that read, "Did he steal the code?" Screens across the kitchen reflected him as fragmented ghosts. The anchor quoted an anonymous source with first-hand knowledge, whom Alex recognized in one syllable, because Mara always clipped her endings. He remembered the last fight. "You don't hear yourself anymore," she'd said, voice raw. "You only hear applause." He called her anyway, straight to voicemail. He tried Noah's old number out of madness and habit. A dead click answered. He braced against the sink, the city spread below like circuitry. "I built this," he told the window, to the airport lights, to the invisible line at the end of possibility. "I built this." But the envelope lay on the counter like a verdict, and his name on the TV crawled beneath strangers' laughter. When he finally killed the sound, the apartment felt medieval, silent stones waiting for war. He didn't cry. He poured water and missed the glass by an inch, watching it sheet across the marble, thinking, if what they say is true, then what am I? And if it's false, who decided to become my god? The ocean, unhelpfully beautiful, said nothing at all. By morning, #StolenSunrise trended. Reporters camped at the curb. A drone saucered past his window like a slow insect. His general counsel, Priya, called before dawn. "We're receiving a civil investigative demand," she said, words stacked like cinder blocks. "FTC and DOJ is circling. There's chatter about securities fraud. If it's proven you misled investors about IP ownership." "I didn't," Alex said, hating the way it sounded like a plea. "Noah and I brainstormed freshman year. He left. I kept building. That's the truth. Then we need documents. Originals. Chain of custody. You need to stay off social media. And Mara's cooperating." The pause around the last word had the posture of a knife. At the board meeting, faces arranged themselves into polite masks. His chair, a man whose handshake always lasted a second too long, cleared his throat. "Optics are tricky. Perhaps a leave of absence? Purely temporary. We'll signal continuity." The word temporary did a slow, surgical thing to Alex's stomach. On the wall, a slide showed a line graph blushing downward, the market's faith quantized into shame. He drove to the old campus lab where everything had begun. Twin monitors, a cold pizza slice fossilized into a paper plate, Noah laughing like everything could still be repaired. He found the storage closet key in his wallet's hidden flap, a talisman he hadn't touched in years, and opened the metal door. Inside, dust held the shape of absence. A banker's box waited on the top shelf, labeled in Noah's loopy print, Futures. He lifted the lid with a reverence he hated. Loose papers, a torn notebook, a photo of them at 20, sweatshirts, hubris, code. On the last page, written small as if the letters were ashamed to occupy space. If I vanish, ask Mara about the Delaware company. She thinks I didn't notice. He called Mara again. This time she answered on the third ring, her voice more tired than angry. You left me to clean up your storms, she said before hello. What company? Too late, Alex. Don't do this. Don't make me the villain because I couldn't be your husband and a founder at once. You weren't either, she said, and for a moment he could see her in the kitchen of their old apartment, sunlight on her wrists, the bowl of lemons. Noah called me the night before She caught her breath. He said a man had been using his name for signatures. He said you knew. I didn't. You didn't want to, she said, and the call ended like a slammed door in a long hallway. By week's end, regulators subpoenaed his emails. His investors withheld a tranche. His father, who never asked for anything, texted, "Is it true?" The mansion's smart lights learned the shape of his insomnia. Meanwhile, a whisper campaign slithered through the industry. Former partners who remembered being bruised, a cousin who remembered being ignored, a journalist who remembered a joke he'd made that read cruel in print. His PR chief staged a fire, then vanished for vacation. And then the hit he didn't brace for. The board suspended him. On the ride down in the private elevator, he saw his reflection in the mirrored doors and thought, wildly, so this is how a life breaks. Not with a bang, but with HR hovering near the potted plant. When the doors opened, cameras flowered. Someone shouted, "Thief." Someone else, "Icon." Both words lodged. He lifted his chin, walking through the noise like an astronaut through static, no oxygen, only echo. Exile was a rented bungalow 6 miles inland where the ocean's roar softened into a rumor. He wore the same sweatshirt 3 days in a row. He tried to code and found his fingers stuttering like a stammer. On the 4th morning, a knock. A courier with no courier's uniform, handing him a manila envelope and vanishing before he could say thanks. Inside, a photocopy of a ledger, a list of transfers from a Delaware LLC named Blue Meridian Holdings to a private account owned by his chair. Dates hummed. Amounts sang. The memo lines were brazen. Consulting for IP consolidation, strategic silence. Clipped to the ledger was a sticky note in neat block print. I thought you should see what you refused to see. M. The M wasn't Mara's hand. It was Miss Childs? No. It was Miguel Childress, the journalist who'd once called him a sun trying to warm a planet that didn't ask to be warmed, who had embarrassed him on stage but afterward had said, quietly, "You have a blind spot where loyalty should be. That will cost you." Alex found Miguel's number and called. The journalist answered on the second ring, voice colder than the ledger. "You swore at me backstage," Miguel said. "You told me I'd never work again. I was wrong." "About me or about your life?" "Both," Alex said. "Where did you get this?" "Whistleblower. Blue Meridian holds the original IP assignment Noah signed, under duress, 3 days before his overdose. Your chair's brother was the notary. Your angel's money ran through it. What did you think venture was, Alex? Charity?" I thought he stopped. He had thought many things. That velocity absolved, that outcomes sanctified process, that winning made him good by proof of concept. "Can you meet?" Miguel hesitated. "You're radioactive. So bring tongs." They met in a diner that smelled like 2 a.m. decisions. Miguel slid across a folder. "There's more. Internal emails. Your counsel warned you early about the shell. You didn't read the memo." I skimmed. The word tasted like rust. I told myself it was noise, that we were too busy building something that mattered. Miguel's mouth twitched, half pity, half victory. "Your ex believed you could be better. She sent me the first breadcrumb because she thought you'd ignore her and you might listen to me. She's still." He stopped, because the present tense was a doorway he didn't deserve to walk through. "What do I do now?" "Tell the truth. Name who you protected because they made you feel necessary. And there's one thing you don't know." Miguel tapped a page. Noah didn't overdose alone. There was a call from Blue Meridian that night. A threat, I think. And then a second call, from you. I called to say I'd looped him in on the cap table if he'd come back sober. He didn't pick up. The diner's neon cut his reflection into bands. Do you think I killed him with neglect? I think you built a system that didn't mind if he died. Miguel's voice softened. But systems have architects. You want absolution? Start with architecture. By the time Alex left, the envelope felt heavier. Forbidden knowledge, yes, but also a blueprint. How the theft had been laundered into legitimacy. How he'd become a brand whose shadow others sold in secret. He sat in the parking lot, phone lit with messages he didn't open, and thought, if truth is a weapon, it cuts both ways. If I swing it, I bleed too. He dialed Mara. Voicemail again, but he spoke anyway. You were right. I made a cathedral to my face and called it a company. I'm going to the press. Not to save me, maybe to bury me, but to stop the men who made me think I was a god. He ended the call and started the car, the steering wheel steady under hands that finally shook. The press conference wasn't a podium. It was a hearing room lined in oak, fluorescent light flattening everyone into the same gray. Cameras nested like wary birds. Priya whispered, "If you do this, there's no coming back to the old life." He nodded. The old life had already burned to a bright, cold star. The chair sat 3 rows back, jaw clenched, eyes pale with a practiced indignation. Beside him, the angel investor's smile looked like someone else's signature. Alex stood, oath fresh on his tongue. He told the story badly at first, too linear, too clean, then stopped and began again, this time from the mess. He described the garage and Noah's twitchy genius, the shell companies and the memo he skimmed because it threatened the velocity he worshipped, the night he found the ledger and the way greed speaks in respectable fonts. He named names. He produced the ledger. He said the word I when it hurt and we when it mattered. I didn't forge, he said. I didn't drug or notarize. But I built the cathedral and let wolves sell tickets. I told myself the ends were so bright the means couldn't cast a shadow. That was a lie. I'm here to pull my name off any claim I can't defend and to put myself on the line for restitution, to Noah's estate, to our investors, to the public's trust one dented with my hubris. The room shifted. The chair stood abruptly. This is slander, he snapped. A desperate man's theater. Then explained Blue Meridian. Alex said, holding up the ledger until flashes burst. Explain your brother's notary seal. Explain the memo you told me was lawyerly smoke. The angel rose, too. We believed in you, he said smoothly. We kept the lights on when you were sleeping on code. You kept the lights on, Alex agreed. Then you sold the wiring. When Noah died, you told me not to dwell in sentiment. I believed you because it kept me moving. I was a coward who outsourced his conscience. He turned to the panel. I'll give you everything you need. I'll sign the consent decrees. I'll pay the fines. But I won't lie for men who taught me that lying was efficiency. After, in the corridor, Mara appeared like a miracle earned too late. No makeup, a sweater with a thread pulled. You finally heard, she said quietly. I did, he said, and it was the smallest brave thing he had ever done. I don't know if it changes who I was. It might change who you are, she said. That's why I sent Miguel the first file. Not to destroy you. To make you choose. He almost reached for her hand and didn't. Did I kill him? He asked. Noah, you didn't help him live, she said, honest as salt. But neither did I. Neither did an industry that loves burn rates more than people. Don't seek a clean hero story, Alex. Seek penance that can't be posted. She stepped back. You'll be hated for this. And you'll be free. He watched her go, the shape of old love carrying its own light down a bureaucratic hallway. He turned toward the cameras again, toward the version of himself that didn't require applause to breathe, and walked. They took his house, his title, his calendar, once a city of obligations, turned into a small town of useful chores. Deposit a check to Noah's sister from a fund he established and refused to name after himself. Meet a group of founders to talk about failure without turning it into an origin myth. Build a small, open-source project with his name absent from the credits. He learned the mechanics of apology, how it's a door you hold open and never walk through expecting applause. He visited Noah's grave when no one was watching. I will spend what I have left on the living, he said to the stone, to the wind, to himself. And when I am asked if a man can be rich and honest, I will say, you can be honest about how you got rich, and sometimes that honesty will cost you the richness you meant. Miguel's series ran. The chair resigned. The angel pled to something with a Latin name and a short sentence. The market digested it the way galaxies digest dying stars. Spectacular flare, then darkness, then the quiet gravity of new shapes. Mara sent a postcard from Portland with a photo of a bridge. Bridges are for crossing, it read. Some for burning. He smiled, a private thing. He no longer tried to own the metaphor. On a winter night a year later, a young founder asked him, "What matters more, truth or success?" Alex paused, hearing the old answer tighten like a spring. He released it. "Truth doesn't need you to win," he said, "but it will make your winning cost less of your soul. If you're lucky, you'll choose it before you run out of luck." The kid frowned. "Is that practical?" Alex shrugged. "It's survivable. There's a difference." He didn't become poor. That would have been theatrical. He became enough. Enough to sit quietly in a cheap chair and feel the weight he'd carried peel off in sheets. Enough to understand at last that wealth had been his language for safety and control, and he'd used it to speak over other people's sentences. Enough to leave space in the room for other voices, to fund what would never bear his initials, to walk away when the terms demanded someone else's dignity as collateral. Sometimes he still woke to the old ache, the phantom limb of applause. He made coffee and let it ache. He did not anesthetize. Under a sky indifferent and full of messages older than blame, he learned a smaller kind of greatness, doing the right thing when no one was counting. The moral never sharpened into a slogan. It hung, deliberate, like a question he'd answer daily but never end. Can you redeem a past that fed you with stolen grain? Or can you only plant different fields and feed others with what grows? In that uncertainty lived his truest wealth, not the certainty of innocence, but the practice of repair. And if the stars offered any message, it was this: truth is not a trophy. It is a road you have to walk without banners, knowing every mile is paid for in the currency of who you could have been and might still be if you keep going.